here for 5 minutes or less, unless you want to keep asking Andrew questions, because he knows everything there is to know about anything.
Or I'll make something up.
Or he'll make something up. Okay? All right. Right? So good. The odds are good for you three guys. Everybody else is sit tight. Okay, the spiel first. We're McDSP, we make plugins. New for the show, version 6. What's it got? It's got VST support. Yay! It's got optimizations across the board for AAX, AU, VST. Did I mention the second largest maker of AAX DSP plugins on the planet besides Abbott? Oh yeah. Wow. What else? Oh, version 6 also has optimizations for the DSP side of things, on the graphics side of things, new features, more artist presets, and it's awesome. And it'll be available in March. That's the end of the spiel. See? Was that painful? No, that wasn't so bad, right? Now, the reason you're really here, when you go to the NAMM network, you want to meet. We're going to meet the guy that beat you for the VP of some famous organization that we don't want to talk about because it's all political. But you can also talk about audio and learn it from people who do it every day and do a great job and have so many awards, they have to have an extra house to put all their awards in. And one of those guys is Andrew Scheps. Andrew, take it away.
Thanks, Colin. I'd like to find that extra house I apparently have, though. I could use it for living, let alone stuff.
Or storing all your gear.
Yeah, exactly. Hi, everybody. Would you like me to speak about anything?
Well, how about tell us what are you currently working on?
I'm currently working on a lot of different stuff. I'm working on a classical record for an amazing composer, Sarah Snyder, based in New York. A record for a great Norwegian artist, Pharaoh, this indie record that I'm mixing. Some stuff for Zach Brown Band. Just all over the map, which is awesome. And I'm doing it all in the box with a lot of McDSP stuff. I have to say, once again, the AE 400 just saves my ass time and time again. If you don't know, the Active EQ, he'll tell you more about it. It's the EQ version of multiband compression, but it does it with EQ, so it's phase coherent. You can even do a parallel if you want to, but it also doesn't give you all the weird, crazy, pumpy artifacts of things, and it's awesome. And lately, I actually recommended it to somebody because I always use it for vocals. So if a vocalist gets very nasal when they sing loud, you can tune the EQ to only take that out when they get loud, and you don't have to do it manually. But a friend of mine called and said he was mixing a live show where the hi-hat bleed on the snare mic was just crazy, and it was killing him. And he tried every multiband compressor and gate and things on the planet. I said, try the AE. Done. I said, perfect, because it does it in such a different way that you can actually control things without destroying what you're trying to keep. So anyway, that's what I would say about that. So when you are in the raffle and you win a free plugin, I would highly recommend looking at that one. It's awesome.
Very good.
So
I completely agree in my completely biased opinion.
well, you should.
Okay. How do you, I want to ask a question to Andrew right away, but when you get to the classical project and then you go back to the rock band project, how is that transition? How do you manage that? You try to keep...
It's awesome. I don't segregate at all. It's over... This will be a large topic covered in about 5 seconds, but basically I was the big console, lots of gear guy for years and years and years, and for the last 18 months I've been 100% in the box. And I love it. I think it sounds better, and I have lots of theories about why I think that, which we won't go into. But because of that, I'm working on, instead of working on one mix at a time because it's on the console, I'm working on multiple things. And I actually counted it up the other day, and I'm, at the moment, working on 28 mixes at the same time. Because instead of doing a song and then waiting for approval and then moving on to the next song on a record, I mix the entire record at the same time, and I'm mixing 3 records right now. So it's awesome. So basically with the classical stuff, I work on a piece, and then as soon as I find myself losing focus or not being productive, I close it, open up another piece, and then when I find myself no longer being able to work on that project, I open up something from the rock record, and it completely shifts my focus. I might spend an hour and a half on a song, I might spend 5 minutes on a song. And so every time I feel like I'm hitting a brick wall, I just close it, open up something else, and it's a brand new, fresh start, super focused, super excited. So yeah, it's great. It's a really, really cool change to how I sort of work on mixes. And I think it lets me work on more disparate stuff. Rather than having to carve out a 2-week period to mix a classical record for almost no money, I do it whenever I have time, and it's super inspiring to be going back and forth.
That's cool.
Yeah.
The Does anyone else have some questions for Andrew? I mean, you pretty much got like an expert here. It's like asking Yoda, hey, what kind of lightsaber do you like? You know, how do you spin up the jump? How do you fight guys that are 5 times taller than you? And all that. He can tell you all those things in the audio way. Anyone? I got some more. I'll keep asking if you guys don't jump in.
Assistant?
That's a pretty good question right there.
Well,
I'll do both for free.
no. Even when I was on the console, I've worked by myself for a long time, and I think it's because this sort of crazy jumping around part of my workflow, even on the console that would happen. But it used to be whenever I would lose focus, I would just go in the house for a bit and wait until I was ready. And I always felt really, really bad having somebody sitting in the studio who's supposed to be working with me while I leave the studio because I can't stand to be in there at the moment. So my hours are weird. I get out of bed and immediately start working, and then as soon as I feel like I can't work anymore, then I'll go have breakfast and then do it again. And sometimes I'll just decide to go run some errands because that's what will clear my head. So having an assistant would be a disaster. It would be a disaster for me and for you. So I apologize. But in lieu of that, I show up places like here and next to the Masters and P&E Wing events and all kinds of stuff. So you can hear me go blah, blah, blah about things all over the place.
Right? Do you find yourself? Yeah.
I am not a fan of isolating stuff. I love, especially, I mean, drums are the perfect example of this, but I love to feel the drummer behind the kit. And because of all the parallel compression I do, a lot of noise of the kit starts to come up, you know, things ringing when you hit other drums. And that's a big part of the drum sound for me. But at the same time, snare is really important to me in a mix. Kick, snare, vocal are 3 of the most important things usually for driving the feel of a mix. So if I can't get the snare right, you know, snare needs to have a certain feel to it. It doesn't always have to sound the same. And sometimes laying in a sample will work, sometimes it won't. And so I will need to deal with the bleed if it's badly recorded or the drummer isn't really very balanced. And that's the biggest problem, is that like John Bonham would get mad if he saw more than 2 microphones and then more than 3 on his kit, because he knew he was going to play it exactly as it should be heard, and most drummers now are not that at all. So they're hitting everything as hard as they can. And the hi-hat is 4 inches away from the snare and the loudest thing in the kit. So I need to be able to balance that relationship and make it what it's supposed to be as opposed to what it is. And so much of the hi-hat is in the snare by the time you've got 3 parallel compressors on it and a bunch of top-end EQs. Yeah, it just really comes up, which is awesome because it's the sound and the excitement, but at the same time, it's also the mess and the thing that fights with the vocal and the guitars and all the rest of it. So. No, it's...
Yeah, actually, so that's a subtle thing about how some customers are pretty smart. I think some customers are smarter than you. He has the smarter than me kind of persona.
Oh, good God, no.
Just hold it. So if you take a multi-band product, process, compression, whatever, you're taking the signal and you're splitting it into all these bands. And the process itself can reassemble it, and it'll be in phase with itself. But if you take that track before you put it to that multi-band thing and have it over here in a parallel track, if you will, it is no longer in phase with the thing that split it up and put it back. So this track is in phase with itself, if you will, but reassembled those different bands. But this other track had none of that processing. So you put them together, and now all of a sudden, wherever those crossover points are, you get a big phase distortion. It's what he's talking about. When you try to do this like drums, like, oh, I want to do some parallel stuff, bring in the ambience, do this. You start going with multi-band compression, you'll hit that problem immediately. So the A400, the reason we did it, it doesn't use crossovers at all. It's just an EQ. And you can put an EQ here and have another track that doesn't have EQ, and they can interact and be together, and it's okay. So
yeah, because it doesn't have to split the signal, treat it, and then put it back together. It just EQs it on the way through. It's basically like paying somebody with really fast fingers to turn the EQ knobs for you. Yeah. Which is, it's brilliant.
He even says better than I did. Yeah. So
you work a lot with side changing or?
Almost none, actually. It just doesn't, I just didn't learn with side chaining, so it's not something I always think of doing. And then every once in a while I'll get a session that someone else has been doing some side chaining on, and it sounds like, oh, that's awesome. But for me, really, the only thing I like is on a compressor. I love to have a high-pass filter on the detector circuit, but it'll get the same signal. I just don't want it to hammer the low end as much. But I don't really do that much sidechaining. If I do, it's for a very specific effect, like pumping a reverb return with the kick and snare or something like that.
So how do you deal with ducking? You know, I mean, so one signal coming from another channel that has the same frequency range.
Just make it work. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't really think about it too specifically. I just kind of keep going until it works. So I know there are a lot of mixers who will talk about whether they have the kick sit above or below the bass, or the bass wraps around the kick, or the kick wraps around the bass, and I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. I just keep going until it works. And it really depends on the song and the arrangement, because sometimes the kick is the rhythm of the low end and the bass is the foundation of the low end, but sometimes the bass has to be the rhythm of the low end and you kind of need to blow off the kick drum. So that just, and I never really go and think about it, but it just is totally dependent on the way it's played and the arrangement of the song, I think. And I just keep going until it's exciting and there's a groove. So, yeah.
That's pretty good stuff. This is like gold, people. It should be on like an iPad.
It's gold, Jerry. It's gold.
It's gold. It's gold. Okay.
I got a question.
Oh, he's got a question.
Have you ever listened to a track through Direct Stream Digital? And also, can you talk a little bit about the variable bitrate app for your low roar record label?
I can. I am not incredibly familiar with DSD. I love the concept of it. And actually, when I was at University of Miami in 1984, we had a DBX 1-bit encoder that recorded on 3/4-inch videotapes. So the very, very super early, and it wasn't called DSD then, it was called something which flew out of my head and might come back. So the idea being that instead of looking at an audio signal and saying, what is the voltage? And then you look 44,000 or 96,000 times a second, you look several million times a second, and all you do is say, is it bigger or is it smaller? And that's it. It's just a totally different way to capture audio. It makes it very difficult to edit. There's only one editing system in the world, so you could do multi-track stuff. I don't mix to it. It's useless. There isn't a consumer format. So the last thing in the world I want to do is hear it and love it and know that no one's ever going to hear that. So that's it. But in terms of consumer audio stuff, there is a really, I mean, there's obviously a huge conversation about it now with Sony introducing their high-end Walkman and Pono, and there are a bunch of high-res audio players. But there now are, I think, 3 companies that will stream CD quality audio. But there is this one company called Aura Stream who have built an adaptive streaming technology. So it's based on MP4 SLS. So MP4 is the AAC encoder, the lossy audio encoder. And they came up with a spec, and this is just a worldwide open spec, MP4 SLS. So it's a wrapper where you encode a file once, and then on the fly, it's like layers of an onion. You can stream any bitrate you want, and it's granular. So instead of having to decide, I'm going to have a 128K file and a 256K file, and then my full res file, you have a 256K, 257, 258, 259, all the way up to uncompressed audio, and it can do 192.24. So crazy stuff. Now, at given bit rates, it doesn't necessarily sound as good as a dedicated encoding because it's not optimized for that bit rate. So a 256 AAC sounds better than a 256 AAC MP4 SLS, but you can immediately get up to a 320. So anyway, sorry, I'm really delving down into the weeds. But what Aura Stream does is it is constantly pinging your network connection. So like I've got an app on my phone for an artist on my label where when you listen, it has up to a 256K stream embedded in the app. So you can listen to the music whenever you want. But then it immediately starts streaming off the server, and we'll see. Yeah, I'm already, and this is on the cell network in this show, I'm already streaming at 547, 593, 624, and I'll get up to uncompressed CD quality audio on the cell phone network in the middle of the NAMM show. It's awesome. And they have a service that they've done, oh my God, I can't remember. One of the bigger classical labels where they now stream uncompressed audio. And the best part is if you go into a parking garage, the bitrate just goes down. And then when you come back out into full coverage, the bitrate goes right back up. And it dips granularly, so you're not making these huge jumps in audio quality. It's all, so if you go down to 256, you don't notice as much as if, like with Spotify, where it just has to buffer and then all of a sudden sounds terrible. So it's a really, really cool technology. So there you go. That was way too much.
That was pretty cool.
about that.
I told you, he knows everything about everything.
No. But I will make stuff.
Okay. Fair enough. Any other questions for Andrew? Or should we do a giveaway?
Give stuff away.
Okay, let's give stuff away. First, let's give it up for Andrew, please. Andrew Scheps. All right. Okay, if you have a raffle ticket,